DevOps OS Season 1. Today, we are going to talk about Cold Email Outreach 101. And what that means is typically we're looking at specifically all the elements that go into making a cold email program successful. So, without much further ado, we are going to get straight into the meat and potatoes of the program because it's an interesting program and you're going to kind of really, really enjoy looking at this. So, here it is. And there are specific pillars that constitute the core cold email program. And typically, how it works is eventually we want the results and revenue, obviously, but it starts with email lists. How do you acquire email lists? Now, we've covered this in detail in the last couple of episodes. So if you haven't seen or heard those, I encourage you to go and look at the episode number 3 and 4 specifically. So we talk about how to use Clay. We talk about how to use LinkedIn Sales Navigator and of course Apollo.io. So you can collect the leads from anywhere. But that's just the tip of the iceberg. That's where you start your cold outreach. Once you've defined your ICP, once you've defined the leads that you specifically want to collect. Once that's done, next comes the domains. Now, try and not try actually, you should never get domains with special characters. I have seen, and in fact, we've made this mistake ourselves, is to have dashes, hyphens, or some special characters in the domains. Invariably, they will land in spam. Do not do that. And I have seen people using .co domains, and we do use them sometimes, but generally, if you can, go only for .com domains. The more domains, the better it is. Try and keep your domains outside of, or do not try and include names like emails or warm up or anything relevant to list, etc. Try and keep them on point, on brand. So, for example, our business is called GoZoopies. So we have domains like trygozoopies.com, getgozoopies.com, gozoopiesmarketing.com, gozoopiesdigest.com, things like this that typically constitute our business in a nutshell. And when you register these domains, make sure that these domains point back to your core website. So when you send cold emails, people would invariably look at the domain and try and call that domain. Now, if it is pointing to a Namecheap, it is pointing to a GoDaddy, not a good kind of a not a good image for your brand. So that's the second part, domains, very important. And try and get two set of domains. Ideally, depending on your budget, you can go with 10 domains, you can go with 100 domains, you can go with 1,000 domains. It all depends on how many new emails are you looking to acquire and how many new leads are you targeting on a day-to-day basis. Either way, keep half of your domains with only a warm up schedule. Now, services like Instantly, and in fact, one of the tools that we have developed in house also does this, which is to warm up these. Now, I've always maintained that you don't need to warm up these domains, but I have been semi corrected. But at the same time, the reason being, these emails, it won't hurt if they were sending out these warm up style emails. So there are AI tools available that would send out business kind emails from a bunch of these domains back to each other, and then they would reply back. So while Google, let's be clear, understands when an automation is sending out an email because you can't really mimic the behavior. There are a couple of different ways with which you authenticate the email accounts. We'll come back to email accounts after this. But in general, the point being, at least half of your domains should be only in the warm up space forever, and half of your domains should be in the live email space and, of course, warming up. Why? Because if you're sending 30 emails a day for actual lead outreach, then at least 20 emails should be sent for warming up even while you're sending 30 cold emails. This way, those 20 emails will get responses and the ISP/ESPs recognize it as a valid domain. So that's an important part to consider. Once you've got the domains, if you see reduced outreach, if you see reduced results, you can always switch from your already being warmed up domain into the core cold outreach and add more domains to your warming up situation. So always have 50-50 kind of a ratio because these domains sometimes can get exhausted fairly quickly. It depends on the quality of the list. It depends on the quality of emails you're sending, the kind of emails, the kind of content, the kind of links, images, etc. So always have 50-50 ratio. Once you've got the domains, next comes the email accounts. Now, there are two core options for getting your email addresses, Outlook or Google. I have personally seen better results with Outlook, but it's a little bit more cumbersome than Google Workspace to manage them. Either way, things to keep in mind is try and get your administration accounts within the United States if that's the market you're targeting. That's the market we target. So the geography should be kind of the country that you're looking at. And therefore, what Google and all do now is they track the usage across your workspace ID and not just your user domain, user account. So if your administration users are logged in from Bangladesh or Pakistan, which is where, and I'm not saying anything bad, or India for that matter. This, I mean, there's nothing wrong in logging in these countries. They are some of the biggest markets for Google Workspace. But if you're targeting United States for the most part and representing a company based in the United States, but your administration logins are happening from India, it will more or less be symptomatic of the fact that you're using a third-party workspace reseller to collect those domains. So or to acquire those domains or to acquire those email accounts. So be very mindful of that fact. So try and give VPN access to your people in India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, etc. to access. Always use residential proxies and do not use server generated IPs, because that will create more complications for you. Businesses like LinkedIn, businesses like Google recognize server IPs, they recognize server level VPNs. So always use a third party proxy if you can, which is what we do in our system. So residential proxies are what help you keep a clean account from the geography that you're working in. Now, with that being said, two accounts per domain is good to start with. At best, three. Do not go more than three accounts for cold outreach, particularly, because otherwise it becomes crazy. And essentially, if one of them goes bad, all of them go bad for the same reason. So try and keep 2 to 3 accounts per domain. Now, as I said, the warm up inbox we've already covered. At least one warm up inbox, two general emails, and half of your domains should be in the warm up anyways. So that part is covered. There's an app called Glock Apps. We highly recommend that you at least have a trial account for Glock Apps. Why? Because the Glock Apps ecosystem will help you check deliverability across all possible receiving domains. Now, there is no hard and fast system. There's no hard and fast rule. There's no specific system that you can use to track your inbox deliverability. You can only track based on where the emails are landing in specific inboxes. There is thousands of data points that constitute on whether your email will land in their inbox or not. But something like Glock will at least give you a baseline understanding of what's happening. Are you landing in promotions tab? Are you landing in updates tab? Or are you landing in primary inbox? So always install Glock apps with all the domains and continue to test it on a regular basis. Generally, Glock would give you a list of about 200 email addresses. Chirai, is that right? 200 approximately? Glock apps list, the seeding list? 100. About 100 email lists, email addresses in that list. And always try and send your email once or twice a week to those 100 emails. I know it's a bit of a strain, but that keeps your accounts in check as far as deliverability is concerned, and especially during the first couple of weeks. Next part to consider is the email content, the copy, the CTA, etc. It is highly recommended to keep your emails under 85 words or shorter. That way, your emails are to the point, they're crisp. When you limit yourself to about 85 words, you know that you will get to the point faster and you will be able to get your message across sooner. A person generally speaks about 100 words per minute. So 85 words would take your reader less than a minute to read the email, and that's okay as long as your content follows a water flow style. So the first line leads them, subject line leads them to the first sentence, which leads them to the second, which leads them to the third, and eventually the CTA. Could be a reply now, or could be ask a question, or could be you want to send some more information. Either way, that is what the crux of email content would be. Once people reply, you have to get them into an automation. How? There are two levels of automation. One, if you don't receive any responses. Two, if you did receive a response, in which case you would take them to Calendly, to take them to analytics to figure out exactly what they replied with. Was the response positive? Was it neutral, or was it negative? So one of the responses, for example, I got this morning was, we are currently undergoing FDA trials and it'll take us about a year before we are in a full GTM sales cycle. Now, this is neither a negative nor a positive response. This is a neutral response. One of them was, remove us from your list. And one of them was, yes, definitely send it. I'd love to take a look. So now these should be automatically analyzed and then placed in the relevant automation from that point. Once they're in that system, you move them out of the cold email sequence and move them into a warm automation. Why? Because now you take them into a CRM, and then you are following up on a one-on-one basis with your sales rep, because now they are a warm lead as far as the response is concerned. So that's typically how your cold email system should function. Now, here are some of the modules that you would want to cover in terms of your email. Cold email outreach system. I've already talked about most of these, the source, such as Apollo, such as LinkedIn, such as Clay. Data fields, what all data fields would you like, and how would you like to customize it? If you've missed out the last couple of podcasts and videos, go ahead and take a look at them. We explain them in detail. Domains, where do you register them, the warm up, and the deliverability tracking with Glock apps. Email sending services would be Outlook or Gmail. The accounts we've already covered. Sending credentials. Generally, there are two ways to authenticate your emails. You either authenticate them with an app password, in which case Google definitely knows that you're using a third-party service, or you authenticate them with an OAuth. We highly recommend creating a setting in your admin account for whatever system you're using. If it is Instantly, if it is our system, if it is any other tool like SmartLead, they would give you a specific authentication protocol to add to your Google admin workspace. Add it there so that your emails will now be recognized as one-on-one sending and not generic. Always create a catch-all account, because in case someone replies or someone kind of misses the point or sends the wrong email, then you should be able to catch all those emails as well. Scheduling the campaign, what all services are you offering, what all accounts are you using, what hours of the day and days of the week will you send out the emails, what would be the external integrations if you need to include, such as referring to a LinkedIn message, such as including a Calendly invite, such as any other campaign that you may have running with the company. You may be connecting them, you may be connecting with 3 different people in the organization. So you might want to include that here. So those automations should be integrated here in the campaign scheduling part. Then the email content is important, copywriting, external reading resources, internal training resources, very important. In my experience, what I've seen is, when you're pitching for a specific service, try and find a reputable source that talks about that service. We were at one point talking about newsletters with our prospects, and this was right after the COVID. So New York Times had published a very interesting article about how all the companies are brushing off their email lists and bringing them back from obscurity because they can't physically reach or meet with these people. So email's the only way to stay in touch, and therefore all the email newsletters are becoming more important. So that was a very interesting article, and that, referring to that article, in second or third follow-up email in my cold email automation, kind of generated almost 10-20% extra responses. So yes, what are the external reading resources that you can include? What are the internal training resources that you can point them to without being cheesy, without selling more? So if you can point to this information in the content, very useful, very valuable. Call to action. What do you want them to do? Do you want them to come to a landing page? Do you want them to come to Calendly? Do you want to come them, just simply respond or engage with your content? So you track them within your CRM. So that is an important part. Automations, how would you do, whether you do Zapier or Zoopies, which is our platform, what kind of tasks do you want to automate, and how do you monitor and test? So that's to be considered for the cold email program. And then the number of results, how many emails acquired, how many cleaned and sent, what is the percentage of email engagement results, opens, clicks, what is the CTA, how many CTS for each, and then the dollar value of business generated. Those are the results that you want to track. So that, in a nutshell, is the overall cold email. Now we have a big masterclass that we are planning. If you're interested in a masterclass, we'll go through all of these details in that masterclass. So this is a shorter video because it's a shorter podcast, but we would love to go through these in a detailed workshop. So if you want access to the workshop, let me know, and we'll share the results and we'll share the URLs with you. So I hope that you enjoyed this. If you found value, then let us know. Share it with someone who can use this information. And if you think that you want to hear from us again, consider subscribing on wherever you are listening to, watching it, whether it's YouTube, Spotify, Apple, iTunes, or Android, any other podcast app. So consider subscribing and sharing it with your friends. And I'm excited to be bringing this to you and hoping that it's adding value to your RevOps ecosystem. Where are we? We are here.